All right, guys, welcome to another episode of Live with a Cork in the Road. I'm Kelly. I'm your wine consultant and wine explorer here in Atlanta, and I am chatting with people who are shaping the Southeast wine industry. I love hearing their stories, and today I'm so lucky I have Travis Green. He's the winemaker at City Winery here in Atlanta, but he's definitely not a stranger to the Georgia wine scene. He has an awesome story to share, and I'm so glad you're here. Hi, Travis.
Hi, Kelly. How are you today?
So good. On this rainy day, we're just hanging out on Google Hangout and having a little video chat. We were worried that the rain was going to mess up our vibe, but I think we're good. So I have to ask you, given that we're, chatting here in Atlanta virtually, you're not a stranger to Georgia. Are you from Georgia? Tell me where you grew up.
I am. I grew up in a little town called Hiawassee, Georgia, up in the North Georgia mountains. It's about an hour north of Dahlonega there. I grew up and actually graduated from high school there before going on to college and moving back in 2011.
Awesome. So you moved away, and then what brought you back to Georgia? Was it wine?
It actually was, or at least the opportunity to work with wine. When I was in Boston, I kind of became interested in wine. I was actually more interested in going into the distribution side first. I love the idea of just being able to taste wines constantly. But when I was learning more and more about wine and traveling, I kind of got to thinking about my kind of home back in Hiawassee. Our family had 13 acres there. My parents were retiring, and we kind of met and thought, what would happen if we planted some grapevines here? In 2011, my mom and dad decided to start planting vines, and they asked if I would be interested in being a part of that. And a few years later, we had a really successful vineyard and winery there.
Amazing. So really it was like, hey, we want to do this. Do you want to be part of it? Were you guys the only ones planting vines at that time? Or kind of describe to me what was going on in Hiawassee in terms of wine?
No, not at all. So the Georgia wine industry actually goes back to the late 80s as far as the production of vinifera or European style grapevines. So that had been going on for a couple of decades at that point. You saw vineyards like Habersham vineyards in Helen, Frogtown, Kaya, which used to be Blackstock, as well as Crane Creek up in Young Harris, all planting vines back in the 90s and early 2000s as well. So we were a little bit of latecomers to the initial burst of planting. But around that time, it felt like the right time to jump on what was becoming a really exploding industry.
So your family was like, we're doing this, and you were on board because you'd seen some success around. But I still feel like you were kind of trailblazing this, at least for your family. This was a new venture. Had any of you guys been involved in winemaking before or studied winemaking?
No, not at all. Actually, well, my dad spent 20 years in Napa. But that was the auto parts shop, not the wine region. So
no joke. I love it.
But we were absolute newbies to the whole industry, and we couldn't have done it without all of the insight from the older growers who had been there for a long time. I think what kind of gave us a little bit of advantage though was kind of coming to it with a fresh perspective and being able to try things and tweak things, try to figure out how best to make wine out of the grapes we were growing.
Okay, so walk me through this process here. So you plant your vines, and then you have to make some decisions along the way. Prior to putting the vines in, how did you even know what you wanted to grow? Is that really a complicated process to decide, based on the soil, based on your location, the acres that you had? How did you even know where to start with what you were going to grow?
Absolutely. So a lot of debt again to some of the other growers in Georgia who at that point had figured out some of the main varieties that would go on to become a mainstay in Georgia winemaking. You see Vidal, you see Cabernet Franc. People were also growing Norton at the time, and I'm glad to see that grape has also picked up in popularity over the last few years. So we started out planting what we knew would grow in that area as far as just would grow. But we were also very interested in starting a few varieties that might work or might not. Pinot Gris was one that we put in, and I've been really pleased with how that grape has done in Hiawassee. Other varieties like Barbera didn't work out so well. So again, that's trying something and pulling it up 3 years later to plant something new. So we were making a lot of decisions, mostly based on frost dates. In that area, we're always hit by a late frost, even as late as Mother's Day or Cinco de Mayo. So a late frost can really be devastating on vinifera grapes without the proper frost protection. So we were really looking for late bud break as we could find.
So this is a little bit of trial and error. Like, it's still the human versus the nature. You can't control everything. And so you guys were willing to take those chances and take those risks, which I think in kind of a part of the country where it's not as well known for making grapes, but you are doing it with surrounding community, like you can get through those challenges together, it sounds like.
Absolutely. And the other thing is that we're such a diverse growing community in Georgia that it's hard to make a variety that will grow well 30 miles away might be awful just over the hill on the other side. So there's all these tiny little microclimates within the greater North Georgia area. And we're all trying to figure out exactly what's going to be able to grow there, what can be tweaked to make the best wines.
I love the adventure of it and kind of the exploratory factor. Like, you think you have it figured out and then something changes and you have to roll with it and reinvent yourself, which is really awesome. So it sounds like you have this really strong background in Georgia's agriculture and the viticulture side. But now you are working in Atlanta. You are in Atlanta's urban city winery. So what does your role, head winemaker, entail at City Winery? Like, walk me through a normal day, because you're not out in North Georgia in the fields as much, but is that involved? Like, tell me what your day looks like as head winemaker.
Sure. So just like in the vineyards, the winemaking side is a cyclical process every year. So we kind of follow the grapes. When the grapes come in between Labor Day and the end of October, we're focused every day on bringing in grapes and beginning the fermentation process, getting everything off to the correct start. The rest of the time, we're doing a lot of packaging, we're blending, we're maintaining barrels. I think one of the real advantages of just being able to focus on the winemaking side and not necessarily the viticulture side is that we can be a lot more involved and adventurous with how we're producing the wines and really being able to stay on top of the maintenance in the cellar.
So it's really cool. You kind of get it, you get the product, and now you have all these decisions to make. But because you said your background wasn't necessarily in winemaking, is the winemaking cellar part also some trial and error? Like, tell me that you haven't completely ruined a whole tank of grapes. So tell me about that, those trial and error moments. What do you do as a winemaker?
No, not, of course, we always have to have some trial and error because for one, it keeps me sane. We're able to try new things, try new techniques, experiment with different varieties, make those different decisions than we normally would, just to see if it happens to work out and shed some light on other processes that we're doing. It's nice at the beginning of the season to put together a harvest plan and know that we have a plan to work, but then be flexible and agile enough during the season to change that plan based on the grapes, based on the weather, based on what we're feeling that day.
Which is really cool. You have a lot of flexibility. You are still working with the elements, even though you're, across the street from Pont City Market in the heart of Atlanta. So that makes me wonder too, having your love for the Georgia land and up north, and kind of that's where your vineyards started and that's where you found your love for the vineyards. But how do you navigate having an identity now in the heart of Atlanta as your urban winery? How often do you even get to still go up and meet with your growers, or how are you kind of navigating that space?
During the growing season, we're able to get up there about once a month before harvest, and then almost once a week as harvest approaches. So that way, we're much closer with the vines. We're able to actually see the fruit coming on and giving ourselves an idea of what to expect. I think as a winemaker working with these grapes, it's important for us to see our job, for me to see my job there as really just allowing those vineyards to speak a little bit more through the grapes. We're getting really good fruit from our growers in North Georgia. So I should really be kind of getting out of the way and letting the fruit talk for itself. So that's what we try to do. We're trying to be as low intervention as possible, using as much native flora as we can, really trying to give an expression of the terroir of North Georgia. And I know that sounds kind of cliched, but that's what we're trying to do, at least.
Cliche only because we're talking about wine and that's what we talk about. No, I love that. It comes up a lot for, any renowned winemaking area. You're talking about the earth, you're talking about the soil and the place. And when I got to visit your winery, which shout out to the setup that you have there. I loved it. I got to walk through this winery, and I've been to City Winery for events. I'm here in Atlanta. I've been to concerts, but little did I know all of the complicated, amazing, like the tanks, the barrels, everything set up behind the scenes. And I got to walk through with you. And it was like this never ending, like Willy Wonka path, because it was like, hey, we're going to try a Vidal Blanc, and then we're going to go downstairs. We're going to have Cabernet Franc and a dry Touriga. And like, oh my goodness, like we're talking about all kinds of stuff. So walk me through, what are you picking right now that is going to be kind of your shining star of your grapes? Like, what grapes are you working with right now that we should know about?
Let's see. So I'm going to start with the 2018 vintage, because I thought that's 2018 was a really good year for Georgia grapes, and I was really excited for how those grapes are starting to show themselves. Vidal came in exceptionally ripe in 2018. Before I've seen it where it can come in underripe, but this year was such a perfect year for it. It had the exact chemistry we were looking for right off of the vine. So we were able to make it in a style that, again, just kind of allowed us to step back. All we needed to do was really process that grape, and it made itself into a fantastic dry wine. I think it's a really cool grape because it can be used so many different ways. Not only is it a really nice dry white, it can also be made into a really nice dessert wine or a sparkler as well. So I really love the potential for that grape. I'm looking forward to working with that some more in the future. The other one two more that surprised me this year. Tannat was great. Tannat came in, and it's already showing just these really beautiful kind of blackberry, blueberry pie notes. So I feel like it's drinking a lot better much sooner than I thought it would. I'm tempted not to taste through those barrels as often as we do. The other grapes that I really liked this year, I thought Sangiovese and Touriga were both really exciting. Grapes that I wouldn't normally associate with Georgia, but that have a great track record in the Dahlonega area. So I was excited to work with those this year, and I've really just fallen in love with what those grapes can do.
You've named a lot of my favorite grapes, and especially because I actually really love the Touriga grape, and I have seen it in North Georgia, and it's exciting. But I usually see people turning it into a port style and kind of your sweeter dessert wine. But you shared out of the barrel your Touriga, and I think my face lit up. So I can imagine that you're excited about that grape. And for me, when I taste something like that is so quality and like so unique to that place, I want everyone to taste it. And my question for you next is like, how do you decide what's going to be moving into your space? You guys are selling to your restaurant at City Winery. I know you bottle some, but how do you decide what's going to be then moving into the consumer market?
Sure. So just logistically, we have a number of taps at 3 different bars in the restaurant, upstairs in the restaurant, in the venue, and in our tasting room. At each of these bars, we're trying to give a good cross-section of wines across our portfolio. So wines for people who like sweet reds, dry whites, kind of brighter style whites versus rounder whites. We're really trying to build a portfolio so people can taste down the line and have a really nice experience and get a sense of what we're trying to do. Some of the other spaces are a little bit more experimental, so I can move a single barrel into one of our spaces and taste out of that barrel. We do about 80% of our production as wine on tap, which just means it goes right out of the barrel into kegs and can be upstairs on the tap line within half an hour. So it's really cool as a winemaker that we can be tasting through barrels, come across a barrel that might just be absolutely singing that day, and be able to put it on the line and have people experience it the same way that I'm experiencing it out of the barrel. That's really exciting. It allows us to be a lot more agile with what we put on tap. And there's a constant process of tasting and mapping the development of the different wines so we can line up different wines behind the ones that are currently on tap. It gives us a lot of flexibility about how long or how short of time we want to age wines.
It's really neat. It does give you this total open playing field. And when someone asks for something and you're thinking, hey, I might have something really close to that, but kind of adventurous, I want to let you try it, you can, because it's on tap. So you can just give them a little sample. Like that makes it really, really easy to taste little pieces of what Georgia's offering. Sure.
And the wines on tap, they really are a snapshot of the barrel. Wines in the bottle, they develop over time and develop quite beautifully over time. But on tap, the wines are are always covered with inert gas. So it really is a snapshot in time. You'll taste that barrel, and that barrel will be, when it's on tap, you'll be tasting exactly what the winemaker was tasting out of the barrel.
Not many people get that experience. I mean, really, if you're living here in the middle of the city, where can you go and have barrels just sitting there ready to tap? Like, it doesn't happen, right? So I think that's a really unique experience to be able to offer. And I know that you guys also bottle some stuff though, right? Are you in retail around Atlanta, or is it only sold at City Winery?
Only through our tasting room right now, though we are always talking about expanding. But at this, we're such a low production that we really haven't gotten there yet. I would like to at some point. So right now we're only selling through the tasting room. About 20% of our production is bottled. The rest goes to tap. But that 20%, I think it takes up 60% of our time. The 20% we bottle, it's usually we're looking for small lots of single vineyard wines, usually blending those lots pretty intensely in order to build a blend that can withstand aging in the bottle. And on top of that, the bottling process itself is much more laborious than kegging the wine. So we have to be very careful with that to ensure that what we're putting on the shelf is really the best product we can.
It's interesting that you say that, because you have this unique, really kind of beautiful opportunity to not have to bottle everything. You don't. Exactly. You can literally move it from the back of the space at City Winery up to the front to your consumer. Like, you can do that. You don't have to put on a truck. You don't have to do all that. So you are able to produce and then sell immediately. And I think you should definitely take advantage of that. It sounds like you are. But I do remember I know you guys are pretty active on social media. And I remember you guys had this contest. Maybe it was like a year or two ago, but you had a contest that was, we had this new wine and we needed someone to name it because you were going to bottle it and it was going to be like this new thing. So what ended up happening, and what was the wine that people were trying to name?
So that was our first dry Georgia wine that we released last year. It's on the shelf as Georgia Darling. That was the winning name. But what I really liked about that wine, it was a blend of Vidal, Chardonnay, and Viognier. It was very fruit forward and floral, but it had this really angular, racy backbone to it from the Vidal, from the acidity. So Georgia Darling felt really, really right to me, because it can be taken as both this kind of round, nice, kind of comforting wine. But if you've ever heard somebody from the South say, "Oh, darling," you know that it's not always a nice tone behind it. So that to me kind of signified that sharp acidic backbone to the wine. So I liked what we did with that one. Our graphic designer did a great job on the label. But I think more than that, it was a way for us to try to get people engaged. It was the first Georgia white that we were releasing as part of our bottle program. So we really wanted to kind of celebrate that and bring the community in to help us out where they could.
It's really neat that you let people get involved. I mean, I have to tell you, I don't see Georgia wine on the shelf very often. I mean, I go up to North Georgia quite a bit. I have a lot of good friends up there, and I love what some things are happening with these grapes. They're doing amazing things for the wine. But I was very pleased and surprised to see how much you guys shine a light on what Georgia is producing. It's exciting. From an urban space, you guys are really not afraid to offer these really cool things. And then getting the crowd involved of how can we make this Georgia's own and call it Georgia Darling? I loved that concept. And it's super fun. And I want to try next time if there's another one. I want to compete.
First and foremost, we're a Georgia winery. We're located in Atlanta, right in the heart of downtown. So we always want to be shining the light on Georgia viticulture. And I think the people who are actually growing the grapes deserve a lot of that spotlight. It's not the easiest place in the world to grow grapes, and the fact that they can deliver us fruit that rivals fruit from various other areas and can produce just really evocative wines, that's something we always want to celebrate.
You are doing a very good job at it. High five. You guys are really showing what Georgia does best. And it makes me think, though, too, because a lot of people might be familiar that City Winery has other locations other than Atlanta. Yeah. And how does that work in terms of your position as the winemaker? Are you talking to the other winemakers at your Nashville location, or is it in New York? There's a couple other locations. So how connected are you, and how important is it for you to stay true to what Atlanta wants to do?
Each city winery has its own winery and its own winemaker. And I think if, just like any collection of winemakers, if you get us all together, we'll all have 7 different ways to do one thing. So we've all got our own personalities, but we're a very tight knit group. I actually was just up in Nashville this weekend. We were switching some equipment back and forth. So I'm always really connected to the other winemakers, and it's so nice as a winemaker to kind of have that built-in community to be able to bounce ideas off of each other. As far as what we're doing in Atlanta versus at some of the other locations, we're always going to use at least 40% of Georgia-grown grapes. The remaining 50-60% will come from the West Coast, and those grapes will be divided between the different locations. So oftentimes I'll have some of the same grapes that Chicago may have. So the winemaker there and I can go back and forth and discuss the crop and come up with strategies if we need to.
So it really is a collaboration sometimes, especially when you're working with the same type of fruit. You have this collaboration opportunity, and you can kind of trade tricks and ideas and downfalls and kind of go with that.
Exactly. It's great to have that network right behind me.
I also love that you have another network here in Georgia. I was reading about this because as I learned more about Georgia and looking for those collaboration opportunities and just kind of seeing as a statewide effort what's being done to support the winemaking and the grape growing in Georgia. And I saw somewhere that you are a member of the Wine Growers Association of Georgia. Is that correct? Are you still involved with them?
The Wine Growers Association is now kind of merged into a larger statewide organization, which is a great step forward. Rather than having a few kind of regional atomized networks, we've now got one kind of statewide network that can kind of speak for the industry as a whole. They've been great. They're doing a lot of things that are really helping to improve Georgia viticulture and winemaking. We have the Georgia Trustees Wine Challenge every year. So it's an all Georgia wine competition, which is a great way to taste everybody else's wines and come back and have a context to discuss them. On top of that, there's a meeting and seminar once a year at Chateau Elan, so we can all get together and kind of keep up on the latest research and talk about what we can do to kind of further the industry here in Georgia.
That's a great opportunity. I mean, how often do you think about other industries that are like, hey, we want to get together with our quote unquote competitors, but here you are because as a whole, you're helping Georgia learn and advance. And then, I always think about it when I think of wine regions, it's like, it's a destination. Like the more people that do well in the area, then it becomes a destination to go taste wine. And as a consumer, you're probably going to want to go to more than one winery when you're around. So having a successful area and seeing everyone grow seems to be a really important thing for this state. And it's exciting to hear that you guys do get together and share your knowledge. Now, I do know that there's something, though, about City Winery that I wanted to ask you because I think it's really neat whenever I see kind of taglines or mottos that are trying to set themselves apart. And I noticed that a lot of the advertising for City Winery, it says, indulge your senses, right? That's the tagline. And I'm assuming that it has to do with both your wine and your food experience when you come to City Winery. So tell me where that tagline comes from and how do you excel at letting people indulge in their senses?
Well, it really goes to all three. I mean, beyond the restaurant, it's also the music venue there. So you're able to drink really nice locally made wines. Oftentimes wines that are made, 20 yards from where you're sitting, in a venue that's been rated one of the best in Atlanta to see really fantastic performances and having a meal that's being prepared with local ingredients as well. So we're really trying to give people a full sensory experience. Not just from the decor and what you're seeing on stage and what you're hearing from the artist on stage, but down to what you're experiencing in the glass and on the plate.
It really does sound like it's a full-on experience. I've been to a lot of concerts there, and I think that I want to go there more often just so I can combine all of those three things together. Have you ever thought about like music pairing with your wines, like bands that represent your wines or people that have come? I'm just thinking this would be an overall sensory experience.
We have, when we get together with our marketing team to help name the wines and put together a calendar for their release, one of the things we'll do is sit down and taste the wines while we're coming up with the tasting notes and come up with kind of music pairing notes as well. For example, our Syrah last year was so kind of earthy and woody. It really was kind of taking us on a kind of a singer-songwriter type vibe. So we always try to pair those things together because we are a music venue, and the wine it should be complementary to the music.
It absolutely should. I think it just gives it this whole other thing. And then you add in the food, and then it's like, it gives the whole experience and attitude. I love that. I did not know that you guys are putting that in your tasting notes. That's fantastic. Please continue. That's super, super unique. And you mentioned that you're going to be having this new space with a tasting room. It seems like that's kind of exciting in terms of if someone just wants to go and learn about the wines. What's going on there? Like, what are you going to be offering? Flights, or will it be only on tap, or what's going on with the new space?
Absolutely. It's going to be in our speakeasy bar that's been completely retrofitted for a tasting experience. We're going to be offering our 7 bottled wines as well as six tap wines that I'm kind of selecting throughout the month. So as I said before, we can switch out the wines on tap really quickly and be really flexible with that. So I kind of see this as a space not just to taste and experience what we're doing with the wines, but also to learn about the different wines. For example, I can put on a wine that's been fermented with 2 different yeasts, or a press run or a free run on tap there, and allow people to taste the difference and learn about all of those different decisions we make as winemakers to craft that final wine. So I'm really excited to have it as just a space where, as a winemaker, I can go and present the wines, talk to people, hear people's feedback about the wines, but also give them a little bit of insight about how the wines were made and what we were thinking when we made them.
I was just going to say, having the opportunity to hear that instant feedback from people drinking your wine, because sometimes that doesn't always happen at a larger winery space. I don't see as often the winemakers, behind the tasting bar. It does happen. I'm not saying it doesn't happen, but this gives you a full-on opportunity to be like, yeah, I made this wine. Here, taste it. And then really get people's feedback. And it makes me wonder, like, what are some things that people say when, for example, you have to be someone that offers someone the first taste of Georgia wine? Like, I'm sure that's happened to you. When someone first tastes Georgia wine, what are some reactions?
Honestly, the most reactions I have is people saying, wow, I had no idea. I think a lot of people are expecting much less than what we can offer as Georgia wineries. I think there's kind of a stereotype that all wines in Georgia are going to be flabby and sweet and not particularly structured or balanced. But I think we're easily proving that wrong. And I don't mean just with vinifera varieties. I think as a whole has really stepped up and improved everything from the vineyard to the cellar. But I think one of the cool things about Georgia is it's just such a diverse state, especially for grape growing. We can make wines on all ends of the spectrum. Yeah, when people come in and taste a wine and we casually mention, oh, these are from grapes grown an hour and a half north of here, most of the time we're blowing their socks off already because they had no idea that style wine could be made in Georgia.
Like literally just north of Atlanta. They're probably like, wait, what's going on?
Yeah.
But I think what's really exciting, and I think you may have been a part of establishing the first one, but now Georgia, not 1, but 2 American viticulture areas. Is that correct?
That's right. So American viticulture areas are really just, they're recognizing that a specific area has a specific viticultural value, that it's producing grapes and wines that will taste different from anywhere else. So now we have 2. We've got our newest one is the Dahlonega Plateau, kind of centered around the town of Dahlonega, and that contains a lot of the stalwarts of the Georgia wine industry: Three Sisters, Frogtown, Kaya, and a number of other ones. Cavender Creek is up there in that area. As well, Wolf Mountain with their sparkling program. So it really reflects the history of grape growing, especially vinifera grape growing in Georgia, but also a lot of the newer guys are in that area as well. So it's really exciting to see that finally come to fruition. On top of that, we also have the Upper Hiwassee Highlands AVA up in extreme North Georgia. It runs from Towns County and Hiawassee over towards Blairsville, and then crosses the border into North Carolina to encompass Hayesville and Andrews, that area. It actually goes a little bit through Tennessee as well. So it's a multi-state AVA. There's a ton of growers doing some really cool stuff in that area as well. So 2 AVAs, each within an hour and a half from each other, but growing totally different styles of wine. It's really exciting to see more areas kind of define themselves in that way.
Well, it's all about the identity of that place. And look, now that's like official on the map of these are areas where certain things are grown. I mean, that's huge for the state. It's huge for the profession and the industry. So congratulations for being a part of that and showing what we can do. And I think I always wonder this of winemakers because I worked with one, and I always asked him like, okay, so we're making these wines. What do you have when you're done? Let's say you're in the cellar for like a full day. What are you drinking when you get home?
Let's see, a beer? No.
Very, very honest answer and very typical. I actually really like that.
No, I mean, it's hard to say. After, I will say that during harvest, when you're with the long days, especially in early harvest when it's still 90 degrees out, a cold beer is really nice. But during the weeks, especially during blending. Right now, we're in blending mode right now, so I'm tasting a ton of different blends and trying to figure out what's working and what isn't. Honestly, I'm drinking a lot of Barbera right now because it's kind of a touchstone for me. I know kind of how I should be tasting that wine and how it should feel. So I love coming back to that. It tastes refreshing and kind of just brightens everything up. If I've been tasting too much throughout the day, kind of resets my palate a little bit.
You mean when your palate is exhausted, you need to have some like refreshment?
Yeah, exactly. I need some acid and really grippy tannins to kind of bring it all back. Other than that, green tea is great.
The healthy choice. I love it. That's so perfect. Yeah, you got to have your green tea, you got to have your antioxidants, and then go back and drink more wine. That's so perfect. Well, before we wrap up, I really want to hear how people can find out more ways to support your Georgia wine program. Where can we find you online? Do you have events, tastings? How can people explore what you're doing at City Winery?
Oh, absolutely. We have constant events going on. The best way would be to go to the website, citywinery.com/Atlanta. There's a few cool ones coming up. We're doing a number of events coming up. One is a wine 101 course on Pinot Noir, so you'll get to taste through our Pinot Noirs. And then also going to be celebrating National Wine Day just by kind of we're having an open cellar day at City Winery, so you can come through, taste a couple of wines, walk through the cellar. We're going to have complimentary short tours throughout the day and winding up in our tasting room. And you'll find me there on Wednesdays.
Amazing. So people can actually come and cheers with you on Wednesdays. And it sounds like you have a lot of events that are constantly updated on the website and on social media. So encourage people to check out there. I'll be back to drink more Georgia wine. I definitely want to go to a concert and drink your wine and pair it with some music. So that sounds really fun. But yes, I really appreciate your time today and keep doing what you're doing. Thank you so much for shining a light on our state and the Southeast wine industry. Travis, you are awesome.
Cheers, Kelly. Bye-bye.